Ah, greetings. Right, this is the live stream will start in a minute. Properly, I just thought I would try just get it up and running first of all before 7 o'clock. Oh yeah, and here I am. I'm on here as well. Just trying to work out how to do comments on it, which is bloody hilarious because I have no idea. View comments. You can't. Maybe you can't do comments on the mobile. I don't know. That's really super annoying. So yeah, I will be live streaming. This is the Forest Garden workshop, and I will be live streaming this in about 2 minutes. So I've got 4 people who are turning up. I hope. Let me just grab a. I haven't heard anything back. I haven't heard anything otherwise, so I presume people are still coming. So there's 4 people who are on their way, and I will be. The format for this evening is that I will be talking about forest gardens, and it's a beginner's workshop, so it's kind of covering all the bases about creating a forest garden, but it's very sketchy on detail. So there's an awful lot. There's not that many. There's not much talk about species. It's mostly about the kind of the process and the ideas behind a forest garden, rather than nitty gritty plants and where to put plants and kind of interesting but more detailed fun stuff. So this is just me talking for now. So I'll be talking for about an hour with a slideshow, and then I will be starting the Zoom workshops. So everybody who has signed up for the workshop should have a Zoom invite, and click on that Zoom invite, and at about 8 o'clock, and then I will let you get in. If I can't get, if for whatever reason it doesn't work, I will send you an email. So there's 4 attendees tonight, and then I will send you all an email, the same email address that I used earlier on, with an updated invite. It should work, but you know how Zoom is and technology, it might not work. Anyway, I'm going to get rid of that. That's kind of really annoying that I can't actually see what the hell's going on. I want to get comments on here. YouTube Studio. I don't know. Maybe it's got comments on. It's. I've got an old laptop, so it's a bit harder to get videos, playlists, comments. Maybe comments in here. No, nothing. Nada. Live. Nope. Health review. That's a pain. I want to be able to type out the comments here. Oh, I've got a comment box here actually. There's a new bit of kit that I put on, which means I can live stream to various places. Hello everybody. Now again, I don't know if you need to have a YouTube account to log on to comment. Probably, which would be a pain in the butt if you do. But there we go. Right, let's turn the phone off. Airplane mode. Cool. Greetings and welcome. My name is Jake Rayson. I am a forest gardener and a forest garden designer, and this is the regular Monday, first Monday of the month, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. beginners real-time forest garden workshop. What a mouthful. This is going to be me on YouTube live streaming for about an hour. No, probably less, probably like 40 minutes, and then tea break, and then I'm going to jump into doing into the Zoom meeting. We've got 4 people who have booked for tonight's workshop, so I hope you're there. And yes, we shall get on to the kind of nitty-gritty stuff. If you want to take part in the Zoom workshop, you have to sign on. If you want to sign up for the workshop, you can do that via my website, natureworks.org.uk/courses/realtime. Get that up on the screen. Wrong screen. Let's try that again. natureworks.org.uk/courses/realtime. Okay, so that's where to go if you want to sign up and get in on the Zoom meeting afterwards. First Monday of the month, so there we go. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, this slideshow is always online. I've got it running locally, but it's natureworks.org.uk/realtime. That's where the slides will always be. So I will be updating them. I'll kind of update them a little bit tonight. But their slideshow will always be there. So if there's something that you missed out on or you haven't got the reference for it, it will probably be in there somewhere. There's a load of notes. If you press the P key on your keyboard, no, in your on your keyboard, there we go. It shows you the notes on the right hand side. Okay, so this is, yeah, this will, any extra links, they'll be in there. Right then, without further ado, I'm going to get cracking because I have not got that much time. Forest gardens. Well, what I wanted to cover first of all is the structure for tonight. So to keep it simple, I've kind of broken it down. The kind of creation of a forest garden I've broken down into 3 stages. So the first stage is plan, which is mapping and figuring out the observations and creating getting a wish list and doing the design. So it's that process, is the actual planning, where you're not really getting your hands that dirty. Second stage is the canopy. This is kind of creating the infrastructure for the garden. So kind of 3 different parts of that: protection, like mostly windbreaks, perennial veg, getting them started early, and then the canopy layer, which is your structural plants, is just be your big trees. And then there's the third part of it, third kind of phase of it really is cultivating. So cultivating each section by section, cultivating each section, preparing the ground, planting the shrubs, planting out the ground cover. This is awfully kind of simplified and very neat and tidy, but it just helps me when I'm thinking about designing a garden. These are how I approach each of the stages. So hopefully it will help you as well. So remember, plan, canopy and cultivate. If you are interested in a forest garden, buy this book is what I would say. Cool Temperate Forest Garden book. This is fantastic. This is Martin Crawford's Creating a Forest Garden. I actually have, if you've signed up to my newsletter, I'm doing a giveaway. I'm doing a giveaway on this book on Wednesday, so it's not too late. But yes, send me an email. Say I want to be in on the raffle. That's really, really good. That's just like covers a load of plants. He's written lots of other books as well about trees and shrubs and nuts and stuff. But that's like the one book that I kind of recommend to get hold of. And then buy that book. When you are thinking about forest garden, I know there's a couple of people who I've kind of spoken to a little bit before. It is a commitment, and it is like a low maintenance form of gardening, but it is a commitment and does require time and effort and resources. And yeah, but this is what it is. I mean, you can go, you can spend a lot of time doing it. You can spend little time doing it. Most of the work is loaded up at the front, but it can take, like any garden, it can take a long time to get it established, because they are quite gardens are quite a lot of work to get them established. What's beautiful about, I can show you a little picture actually. I meant to put this in. I put it on, stuck it on the wall. See if I can see myself on the camera. I don't know. Where is it gone? There we go. So, like with a forest garden, the energy is kind of the energy is quite low required to maintain it, but there's like a bump of energy that you need to get over. You need to get over that bump first of all, and that can take quite a long time, depending on the size of the land that you've got and everything. So, yes, a forest garden is for life, not just for Christmas. And yep, there's a link to buying that book there. And the other thing I was going to mention as well is there is a spreadsheet. I've got a spreadsheet which accompanies this book. I made it with a couple of people, Chris Day and Ollie Boone. I did the majority of the work, I think it's fair to say, but they kind of helped. Got the ideas rolling and everything, so it's a collaborative effort. It's there's a link in the show notes in the slideshow for it, and this is a spreadsheet of every single plant in the book, and it's a sortable spreadsheet, and you can sort through that. So when you come to the point where you're starting to choose plants, you can sort through this spreadsheet here. So let's get on then with planning. So plan, number one, plan. First question you've got to ask yourself is why? And for me, this is about the climate emergency. I've been banging on and on about the climate emergency for, I don't know, 12 years, I think it is now. And you just, it is a bit like, yeah, it is a bit frustrating, the lack of engagement. And this is the main reason why I got into gardens, and it's the main reason into forest gardening. It's the ecological and the climate emergency. And there's three things that I think anyone can do. The first thing is stop flying. This is like practical impacts that you can have. Second thing is to eat a plant-based diet, or go vegan if you want to be controversial about it, but yeah, stop eating meat. And the third thing is to get active, and whatever shape or form that is, do something, engage, change the systems, change the systems. Like the first, George Monbiot puts it very eloquently. There is very little that the individual can do. It's not about individual decisions. It is about systemic decisions that need to be made, that decisions by government, and it's been fobbed off onto the individual, and it's a lie. It really is a lie that it's the governments that need to lead on this action, and they're not. And then there needs to be pressure put onto governments to do that, and in whatever shape or form that is. I do forest gardening. This is what I think is it works on a number of different levels for me. It opens up, it bridges the gap between the food that you eat, connecting you with the landscape, connecting you with wildlife, and also it gets you active and it gets you questioning things as well. So yeah, that's why I'm doing it. Yes, I mean there are an awful lot of yeah. One thing I do want to say about taking political action as well is I had a kind of dawning realization. I wrote to James Brown. Is the chap who is in Wandsworth prison for gluing himself to the top of a British Airways plane, I think it was, on route to Amsterdam, and it was like a really. I've been supporting him, and I've written to him. And the realization that I had about it was that it takes everybody in all different walks of life to work together. We are all connected. This is not an individual effort. This is a shared effort. So that kind of realization has been a great. It's not my sole responsibility to tackle climate emergency. It's everybody's responsibility to tackle climate emergency and do something about it. But it's the strength and the power that we have when we join together. And I think that is absolutely crucial. So people have their specializations. People do the things they're good at, things they're not so good at, and then do what you enjoy and do what you're good at and do it in the service of other people. I think there we go. So definitions of a forest garden. That's basically it's it is an edible ecosystem is a short way of saying it, and it really is the kind of traditional definition of a forest garden is about layers of trees, and it's emulating the edge of a woodland, and it's all around about the cool temperate. We're here. I live in West Wales. The UK is in a cool temperate climate, and forest gardens have been associated with that. But I kind of would stretch the definition of a forest garden actually, because I think it kind of applies. The principles apply to a whole variety of different zones, so that it really is about creating an edible ecosystem. There is a magnificent book which is next door, so I won't go and get it, but there's a magnificent book called Tending the Wild. Tending the Wild by M. Cat Anderson, and absolutely brilliant. It's really, really brilliant. It's about the indigenous Californians and how they looked after, they cultivated wilderness, which is just it's like a forest garden on a grand scale. Just absolutely fascinating book from a forest garden perspective, but also like from an ethnobotanical background, or historical background as well. It's quite traumatic reading it, because it talks about genocide, but it's stuff I didn't know about. So it was yeah, really, really good. But the point is, it's an edible ecosystem. But there's different ecosystems, and there's different zones. So it's not a forest garden. It's kind of part of that. So yeah, if you anyone asks you, it really is like it's an edible ecosystem. The short definition is grow edible crops in a wildlife garden. Now I've put here some characteristics of a forest garden. This is an illustration from Martin Crawford's book, which many years ago he said I could use, so he's probably forgotten about that. And on the left hand side it's wild nature, whatever that means, and it goes through to the right. So the further right you go, the more inputs are required, the more energy, the more fragile, the less wildlife. It's so really we're kind of talking about, with the forest garden, we're talking about, it's like on the cusp of you're letting nature do the work. You're letting nature kind of take the heavy load, and you're positioning it around about here because there is less work to be done. I used to work at a market garden for a few months, which was bloody difficult. A load of work, minimum wage, and it was annual vegetables, and it was a commercial. It's a commercial outfit. Annual vegetables are a lot of work, and I think this is what is such a bit of such an eye opener. On a kind of small scale, a forest garden can be productive, but it also can be far less input as well. So I just got to very quickly go through the different parts of it. It's sustainable because you aren't importing anything into a forest garden. It provides its own nutrients and it provides its own pest control. So it's like a closed loop, a closed system. But crucially, it's a closed system which sits within the landscape. So you're taking advantage of the wind direction, or the shelter provided by existing trees, or the flow of the water. All these things are taken into account if you're designing it and creating it effectively. So it's sustainable, and you can keep on growing food like this. So I think really big part of forest gardening is that it's don't have to be. I was really kind of hooked up about the idea of growing all our own food, and I've kind of thrown that out the window because I think it's far more important to be aware of how food is produced, and then to look at industrial agriculture and say industrial agriculture is unsustainable and needs to be changed, and it's far more effective as part of that process to challenge that. A forest garden is also productive. What is really I just absolutely love about forest garden is everything has a role, or multiple roles in there. So you can eat parts. Some parts are fertility plants. Other parts are habitat for wildlife. It's great. So there's just like a whole range of different uses, but also a whole range of different crops. So you have food crops, you have leaf crops, fruit, nuts, poles, herbs. Yeah, it's mushrooms. It kind of goes on and on. Medicinal. There's a whole range of different things. So it's productive, and this is what drives it, and it gives it a real purpose as well. Which, as I was never really a keen gardener until a few years ago, and this is what's really kind of changed my mind about gardening, is when it has a purpose, and then you're designing for yourself and for your what you want to do, but also for the wildlife as well. It changes absolutely everything. It is wildlife friendly because this is it's an ecosystem. The whole point is to use nature to create, to leverage nature to do the work. And so you want to encourage wildlife in. Paradoxically, you want things to eat your plants, because then you'll get bigger things that will eat those things. So as part of this, I'll mention this again later on, use native plants where you possibly can, because insects eat native plants more than non-native plants, because they have co-evolved in the same ecosystem. There are layers, so you can see from the illustration that the forest garden has a number of different layers to it. So you're utilising all the different layers: the canopy layer, small tree, shrub, herbaceous perennials, ground cover, tuberous roots, vines, climbers, all sorts of things going on. So you're using all the available space. and oopsie, predominantly perennial. So really, you're looking at using perennial vegetables. You do have annuals in there, so I've always got nasturtiums kicking around. I've always got marigolds kicking around as well. They self-seed, and I'll let them gum up some places and pull them out other places, but they're always there. And there's a lot I could talk about with annual seeds and annual native plants, but I won't. Now is not the time, but it is quite exciting. Anyway, next up is a definition of the guidelines. These are 4 guidelines I think are really, really important throughout the process, and I know I've divided it up into plan, canopy, and cultivate as the kind of 3 stages, but I do think it's much more of an organic process. It's much more of a cyclical process. The creating any garden, it's not just like you design it, you go out, you plant the trees and put them all in, and then you do that bit, you do that bit, and that's it. That's finished, all done. It's a cyclical process. You go out, you look, you see, you come back, you adjust, you go out again. Yeah, it's much more toing and froing. But throughout that process, I think these guidelines are really, really important to remember. There's a whole load of notes on here, so I won't go into great detail. So press P to get the notes up. Protect is number 1, is like plants like other plants. Plants like to be protected, protect them from wind, predominantly wind, but also from frost and from cold temperatures, and but generally it's wind that you want to be protecting from. I use a lot of dead hedges here. We're on a hillside, and dead hedges are absolutely brilliant. I'm doing a live stream about it on Wednesday. Dead hedges, brilliant. 4 posts in the ground. Use brash, which is old kind of cuttings and any old crap that you've got kicking around the garden, and you fill in between the posts. You just fill in lots of branches, and that gives a chance for the living hedge to grow up, but also it protects the tree which is growing, and it has made a massive difference. It really, really has. They've just done so well. Spacing is the other key thing. So protection, spacing. Make sure you get the spacing right. This is kind of fundamental. Don't put a massive, great big tree in the middle of your garden. That will just swamp everything else. After 20 years, you won't be able to see anything else. You want to make sure you get the right sized tree. And yeah, this is like, I think I'll cover this later on, but get the right rootstock. If you're planting fruit trees, get the right rootstock to make sure that you've got the right height and the right diameter for the tree that you're putting in. The rule of thumb, 1/4 to 1/2 of average canopy diameter. That's the spacing that you want between them. So there's an illustration here which you can get, but that's what we want, is 1/4 to 1/2 of the average tree diameter. Remember that when you're doing your designing. And ground cover. Yes, ground cover. Always keep the ground covered. This is really kind of interesting, actually. I think ground cover is far more important at the beginning, at the early stages of a forest garden. When things start to get established, the herbaceous perennials, then really you don't tend to need so much ground cover because they're filling up that space. So, and there are some plants like a perennial kale where you will need ground cover underneath it because they kind of got a big stalk and generally have a big stalk on the kale and then lets in a fair bit of light underneath. But other plants, I've got some Turkish rocket, for example, and that just comes up and it covers the whole area, and it is like ground cover in its own right. But whatever it is that you're using, always keep the ground covered. And then finally, nutrients. Make sure that you've got plants for nutrients. Nitrogen and potassium are the two main nutrients. Nitrogen, potassium, and NPK, phosphorus. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Nitrogen is provided by nitrogen-fixing plants such as alders and members of the pea family and sea buckthorn and autumn olive, and there's a range of them, but you want to have plants that do that so that they fix nitrogen and release nitrogen into the garden. Nitrogen provides growth for plants, generally is the growth. You don't want too much because otherwise you get very leggy plants and lots of foliage. Potassium is the nutrient which is used for fruiting. So if you're having a plant which is fruiting, then that will need a lot of potassium as well. So any kind of fruiting plant needs potassium. And a good way for a good plant for potassium is comfrey, a range of different comfrey that you can use. And then I just do a chop and drop with the comfrey. So around each plant is around each fruit tree is a comfrey. Okay, so those are the two things. So remember that guidelines and characteristics and guidelines. But remember the guidelines throughout the whole process. Let's get on to creating a map. Where have I got that bloody thing gone? I've got grid. Generally, I don't use paper because I do a lot of work for a lot of different people all over the country, all over the place. And I've had the luxury and the joy of learning to use CAD. CAD is computer aided design. So I do a lot of CAD work. But you don't have to. If you're doing your own design, I mean, do think about whether you want to go down the route of doing your own design. You don't have to. You can get someone else to do it for you. But if you do go down the route, you don't have to learn CAD. You can do it on paper. The key thing when you're doing it is to get the scale right. I've got an A5 pad. 5mm grid is the best one I've found. And you can get like a A3 paper with a grid on it. And if you have a regular shaped garden, even if it's irregular, you can at least kind of get an idea of where the garden is. I mean, I've been doing an awful lot of work for a garden locally, a very irregular garden, but I just use the plan to say, I'll try these things here. They could kind of fit, and then I'll go over, do a load of work, put all the bits together. And then I will go over and to see in situ if they work or not. So what I'm saying is create a paper plan, and then you can just sketch out, will this tree fit here, will this tree fit there, and do the kind of big trees, but actually do the real design. As much of the design work is involved on site as well. So yeah, work out your scale. 1 to 50 means 1 meter equals 2 centimeters. Yes, there we go. I'm a bit crap with maths, to be honest, so I always have to write these things down. So I have got a whole other course on this. Hold on, let me type it in, natureworks.org.uk/courses/plan. Yes, so there's a course if you want to get into creating your own map and your own plan. There is a course for it. So it's a free mini course. God knows how long it is, about an hour I think, me talking about the step by step creating a CAD plan and creating a paper plan as well, I think. Yes, there we go. I won't talk any more about that. And then observations. Right then, observations. These are giant. These are really, this is when you move into your new place. Okay, the thing you don't do is go out there and go, I want to plant a tree. I know that urge to plant a tree is immense, but you just got to really, if you've got the time, spend the first year observing and planning and designing, and then plant the next year. So we moved here in March 2015, and yes, and then we didn't we planted out in December that year is when we put the canopy trees in. So yeah, don't rush to do it. Do give yourself some time, because it will pay off in the end. You don't want to kind of put a whole load of trees in and they'll be too close together, and you've got to take them out later on, and the greenhouse is in the wrong place and the shed's in the wrong place, and you haven't got the water for the greenhouse, etc. So what I was going to do was talk about the 4 different types of observations to make. So first and most important is the position of the land that you have. This is really, really important, and I think it's something I wasn't really aware of until I started designing gardens myself and looking, is the aspect, so which way your land faces. And it sounds really obvious, but plants, not all plants, some plants like a lot of sunlight, so some plants don't like sunlight, some plants like part shade, some plants like lots of water. You get the idea, but aspect, how much light those plants get, is the most important thing. So if you know the aspect, then you've got a good idea from the off what plants will work there. So generally, fruiting plants generally like more light, will do better with more light. That's a general kind of, not all fruiting plants, but the majority of them. And then look at the orient. So the aspect is is how the land is situated. So the orientation is in terms of the compass. So we're pointing southeast, southeast, I think it is. The elevation, how high up you are, can make a difference, and the slope that you've got. Flat land is invaluable for working on. So we've got a polytunnel angle like that, and it's actually hard work. It really can be quite hard work. But yes, to figure out those things, the aspect, the orientation, how high up you are, and what the slope is like where you are as well, and then put kind of structures and working areas and the high volume areas. Generally, put those in the flatter parts, because if that's where you're going, you don't want to be kind of climbing up cliff faces to go and get a couple of bay leaves. So elements, this is water, wind, sun and earth, and the water is the rainfall, and it's also the groundwater that you have. And when it rains, where does the water flow? We're on a hill, but we've got a spring that comes out the back of the house and creates a little waterfall, and it goes down. So you've got to be kind of careful where the water is. You need to know where the water is, so that you don't plant something which will get washed away or doesn't like water. And similarly, if you've got a very dry spot, then you want to put plants in there that like dry spots. Wind, as I was saying before, protection from the wind is one of the most critical things to figure out. Work out where the wind comes from. Here, the wind comes from the southwest for the summer, and the winter, the wind generally comes from the northeast. So I've got to think about wind protection from those two main points. And then there's the where the sun is in the sky, which comes to the aspect as well. There is a brilliant app which I won't show. It's a brilliant app called Sun Surveyor. What's it? Sunsurveyor.com, I think it is. And this will show you where the sun is in the sky. It sounds really obvious, but at different times of the day and at different times of the year, because when I was younger, I never actually realised that the sun is higher in the sky in the summer and lower in the sky in the winter. And so it's just knowing where the sun is. Then you'll have an idea about what plants will do well with that much light, so you can actually figure out how much light an area will get across the year, which is always very, very good. And it's good for putting up structures as well, because you can see how much shade they will cast. Then features, so really, really important is existing habitats, what habitats are already there. So don't go in and just clear fell everything. I worked on a job. They had completely destroyed a hedge, and then the developer said, "Oh, can you plant a native? Well, it's kind of mostly native hedge for us, because we've destroyed it, and there's wind howling across from the north." So I went and planted up a load of willow and holly and stuff like that. And they shouldn't have bothered. They shouldn't have taken it down in the first place, to be honest, because it was a total waste of effort and poor old trees being taken down. So look at the existing habitat and look at where the utilities are. Really, really important. Power lines and plumbing, water pipes, drains. Figure out all these things and put them down on your map, because for example, you don't want to plant a tree. I've got a job on just down the road, and there is a telephone line, and it cuts across the land. And the land's on different levels, and I think I've got about 5 meters to play with. So I'm putting in a tree which is 3.5 meters, so I should be okay underneath it, because I got some other trees which are 6 meters which I can't put there because they'll be too tall. So mark out where the power lines are and where the telephone lines are, and those things. Structures, existing structures, and also previous structures as well. Always a really good idea on your land to go around and actually properly investigate and dig in different places, just a little bit, just to see what things are where. Very often you'll have an old greenhouse, for example, that's been taken down and dismantled, but people will leave behind the concrete footings for it. The grass grows over the top of it. You'll never know it's there until you go along with a spade and go donk, and then you'll find out, oh yeah, there's something that's there, and then you can actually make use of it, rejuvenate it. No, it's always thinking about using what you already have rather than completely having a completely clear sheet. And then your situation. So, access as well. Sorry. So, for the features, use an ordnance survey map. There's Bing.com maps. They have an ordnance survey layer on there, so you can see where the footpaths are. So it's always good to know that you're not blocking off access, or that that members of the public will be walking across certain parts. So you might want to put privacy in, for security, a whole range of different reasons for doing it. But figure out where the access is, and also keep an access to your land. On that point, I would say if you've got a fair bit of land, if you're lucky enough to have a fair bit of land, then do consider having an area where you're going to put wood chip and topsoil and stuff like that, somewhere where trucks can come in, dump things, and then you can use them. We've got an area here which has proved invaluable to be able to use for people to put materials down, and we can use them off when we're setting up the different parts of the forest garden. Ultimately, you won't need to use that space, but just in the beginning stages, it's always handy. And then you mark all these observations on the plan. There is a checklist, a PDF that I have created, and hopefully that will be some use. This is on. Oh, it's a bit slow because I'm live streaming. There's a link there. It's a checklist of stuff, and it just says, "Have you checked? Have you done this? Have you done that? What the values here, and all that kind of thing." And then do make. Oh, sorry for Earth. Do a soil test to test the acidity of the soil. pH 7 is neutral, and you have more acid soil. Some plants don't like more acid soil. Some plants, like blueberries, require acid soil, and then you've got alkaline soil. So find out the acidity of your soil using a pH kind of testing kit. Find out you can do with the local farmers co-op. You can get tests done for the nutrients as well, to see if your soil is deficient in any way. If you're worried about any kind of what's it called, chemical spillage or anything on a piece of land, you can also get tests for that done as well, and it is worth doing rather than doing a whole lot of work, designing, planning, all the rest of it. If you've got any kind of doubts about it, it's worth paying a few £100 for someone to do a test on the land to see if there is a problem with the soil, because you don't want to be planting into it and everything dies. So, and then the other thing you need to check is your soil consistency. So there's a soil jar test. You can look it up, or you can basically get some soil, make it damp, and you can roll it. And if it rolls into a firm sausage, it's got clay in it. If it falls apart, it's sand. If it's somewhere in between, then it's like a loam. And kind of those are the three main types of soil. Clay is rich in nutrients, but drainage can be a pain, and sand can be easy to grow stuff in, but there can be a real issue with keeping nutrients in the soil and with watering. What was good for all of that is mulching, like mulching with organic matter and getting organic matter into the land. Generally, you want the forest garden to kind of tick over by itself, but at the beginning stages, it might be worth adding organic matter to certain parts of the garden, but depends very much upon your situation. Okay, and then the wish list. So the wish list is the make a wish list for your make a wish list for your plant. Make a wish list of your features. So I should have made this clearer. Make a wish list for your features, and make a wish list of your plants. The features. This is what I've got here. I'll change this. Always start out with the wildlife in your area, because you're creating an edible ecosystem. So you want to have wildlife at the center of the wish list that you have. So wildlife features should come right up the top. Number one wildlife feature is a pond. There's lots of kind of books and information. I've got books up there about making wildlife ponds, but they're brilliant. Ponds are brilliant, attract loads of wildlife, and water's, look at creating water features as well. Even if you can't have a pond, just like we've got a bowl, a really beautiful, the kind of quite cheap kind of metal bowl, and it's for the birds really, but it's also a feature in its own right. a nutrient, create a nutrient budget. In Martin Crawford's book, there is a list. There is a how to create a nutrient budget, and this is to say roughly calculate how how many nutrients are required for the different plants in your forest garden. Seating areas. Now, I think seating areas are right up there. Somewhere you can sit down. I've got a little phrase which is what is it? Coffee and cocktails. So coffee and cocktails basically means when you wake up in the morning and you have your early cup of your morning cup of coffee, which I've stopped drinking, but you get the idea. Where do you have your cup of coffee? What kind of seat? If it's you get the east, the sun rises in the east, and you want to be able to get your cup of coffee and sit in the warming rays of the morning sun. And then in the evening, when you have your pina colada or whatever your cocktail of choice is, then you're getting the sun from the west. And this is actually a really good exercise because it kind of gets you to look where the sun is in the sky and gets you to figure out where and flat part of land where you would put the seating, kind of secluded, sheltered, but with enough light coming in. And then structures, so polytunnel, greenhouse, potting shed, water. Well, I'm seriously considering. I know. Oh, Janet should be watching tonight, and she's a water conservation, water management specialist. But I'm seriously considering move to West Wales, and I thought the last thing I need to think about is making swales or trapping water, or it's West Wales for goodness sake. And then in 4 years out of 5, the well that we use for the polytunnel has run dry. So this year I am seriously considering setting up some big plastic tanks, IBC tanks they're called, and setting them up for harvesting rainwater for the polytunnel for when the well runs dry. So it's stuff like that, thinking ahead. If you're at the planning stage, you have the you have the benefit of foresight to be able to do that. So do think about water structures and conserving water at this stage, because it can save you a lot of time and bother later on. So that's your features wish list. So make a list of all the different features that you want. Then make a list of all the plants that you want. Now, unfortunately, there's a fantastic website called Plants for a Future. It is crashed today. It's just been offline all morning. There is an alternative. The guy's name, I don't know what his, I can't remember what his temperate plants. If you search for Ken Fern temperate plants, he's a guy who's set up Plants for a Future, but now has his own website. He has a database that you can use in the meantime until Plants for Future comes back on. But it's a fantastic resource. It lists a whole load of plants with different uses, and it's brilliant. So use Plants for Future, or there's the RHS plant search, which is actually really good. It does have a lot of natives in there, and has a fair few edibles as well. And then there's the more botanical plant atlas. So there's lots of different resources. Make a list of plants that you want, and then use a book. Actually, what the book's really good for. And what I found is I use Pinterest for a lot of the clients that I work with for collecting images for different plants. Just give different ideas and different features, and just chuck all of the stuff in there. And it's a really good way of bringing ideas together. Okay, so that's the kind of observation side of it, and then creating the wish list, and then you've got your map. And then the thing to do is to put all these things into the right place. So my definition of design, this is my very own definition, is purposefully putting things in the right place. I'm just going to go and check the chat, because I actually got chat on. Oh, sorry, Jane, yeah. Fantastic. There's a message from Jane. Connection is what it's all about. Fantastic. And Jane's husband is James Brown, the chap who's in prison. And Jax says, what sort of size of land are you talking about? Well, I don't know what. Sorry, Jax. I don't know what you mean. Do you mean what land do I have here, or are you talking about forest gardens in general? Because I've only got. So this was 7 minutes ago. So yeah, to pop a question in, like what exactly do you mean? You can have a forest garden. Really, you can have a forest garden in pretty much any size garden, because it's following the principles. So long as you're following those principles. But for example, the garden I'm doing at the moment is very is a very different garden to the garden at our garden here. This is much more like a traditional forest garden with loads of big canopy trees, some ground cover, some shrubs, fruiting shrubs in there, and then there's like a more intensive polytunnel and perennial veg beds. But the other garden that I'm doing is far more, it's kind of more ornamental, scent garden, wildlife, and it has kind of trees around the outside and then smaller shrubs because of the space. It's a small garden. It has 1 meter, 1.5 meter shrubs actually on the inside of the garden because it won't take anything bigger. So yes, do let me know what do let me know what you mean by that. Okay. So I just find it hard looking at myself when I'm talking sometimes. I'll come back to the messages in a second. So designing purposefully putting things into the right place. So whether you're doing it on paper or whether you're doing it on a computer, yeah, I really am. Yeah, I really am in two minds about if people. I think it's actually quite a big ask to get people to design their own gardens. I do think there's an awful lot of skills to take on board. So yeah, I was all very much for like everyone, the DIY ethic. The tools are out there, but it is quite a lot of work to figure out. I mean, hopefully you'll have the tools, enough of an idea from this workshop to be able to set yourself up and decide whether it's something you want to do yourself or whether you want to get a garden designer to do it for you. Or if you do want to get a garden designer, obviously I design forest gardens because I would say that's how I make my bread and butter. But there is a Forest Garden UK Facebook group as well. Facebook, I can't remember what it's called. I really hate Facebook, but group. There are lots of different people. There are lots of kind of forest garden designers about the place. So if you are interested in having someone design your forest garden, that's a good place to look. And also, I mean, if you can, I mean, I do remote garden design, but really, if you can get someone local to design it as well, that's kind of better. That in a lot of respects. If I'm doing this, it's an absolute joy. This garden down the road because I can just pop down whenever I want to go. Oh, will this plant fit in here, and I can measure it up. Whereas doing remote work is kind of harder in a lot of respects. So if you can get someone locally to do it, that'd be great. And you can ask me, and I can find out. It would be good to have like a guild of forest garden designers actually on, and have a little list of them. Maybe that's something I shall write down and consider. But anyway, yeah. So if you do want to do it yourself, I mean, it's a good process to go through anyway. It gets you thinking about it. It gets you thinking about what is possible. This is my friend Dan's paper plan here, and I actually end up designing his garden with him. But this is what he started out with. But I think it's really, really good to do it because it gets you thinking. So you add your observations. We know where the buildings are, the direction of the house, where the hedges are, where the pylons are, all that kind of thing. Then you add your wish lists, like your seating and your pond and your structures and your paths and your greenhouse, and then put circles for trees. Most important thing, really, as I probably said earlier, is to get the canopy layer right, because other shrubs, if they don't do well, you can dig them up and move them. Digging up a tree, unless is a bloody hard work. Digging up a tree and moving it is even more work, unless you have a mini digger to hand, and even then it's a lot of work. So I would really I'd really recommend doing the planning, the canopy layer, and use circles for trees, and that's a kind of 2D representation, the diameter of the tree, and then you get the tree spacing right. The design order. Now I did a live stream about paths, and I've really been getting into doing paths at the moment, because they define the garden and they structure the garden and they divide it up into different areas, and they're going to give you different views, and it's all about the privacy, and they're fantastic. And actually creating the paths is the kind of backbone of the structure of the garden. Sure, there is the trees as well, and you know what tree will fit where, and where will it grow best, and where is the best place for it. But starting off with paths is great. If you're going down the design route, if you're going down the the design route, then do think about the most high traffic areas. In permaculture terms, this is called zoning, but it's a kind of well known, it's a design thing. It's been around for a long time, that you design the high volume stuff you keep closer to the house. So for example, we've got like bay trees at the back door, quite literally the back door, and I just nip out and I grab a couple of bay leaves and put them in the cooking. Whereas the sweet chestnuts, which I actually haven't harvested yet because they're only 4 years old, 5 years old, they're further away. So I'm not making it. I'll go out there and I'll harvest the sweet chestnuts, but I won't be doing that every single day. So likewise with apples, they can be further away. Whereas with perennial veg, like spinach plants, then you want them kind of closer. Cherries, birds love cherries. Keep your cherries close. Whereas pears, nobody eats pears. Joking, yeah. Pears, they can be a bit further away. So yeah, create paths, make areas, try out the structures in different places. If you're creating a polytunnel, putting up a polytunnel or a greenhouse, do you really want to orientate them north to south or south to north? So north that way, south that way, and that way they get, oh god, when the sun rises and the sun goes round, they get an equal amount of sunlight across it. If you put them that way round, then they get unequal. This gets unequal amount of sunlight. Yep. So orientate your greenhouse or your polytunnel north to south, and then try trees out on the design as well. Blimey, there we go. Little pause. Did I say I was going to be 40 minutes? Canopy. Oh, okay. Bye, Jax. Not Sophie. Oh, fantastic. Hi, Janet. Right, Jax has got to go. Okay, let's get cracking on the canopy layer. So the windbreak. So the canopy layer. Right. What I want to talk about here really is the structural parts of the forest garden. So the kind of real structural parts are the windbreaks and the canopy trees, the big trees that you put in. As I said before, you've got to get these are the kind of the bones of the garden. Get these. It's really, really important to get these right. So I'll talk about windbreaks first of all. And I will also talk about perennial vegetables. Now, the reason for talking about perennial vegetables, I know generally they're quite little and they're not really big canopy type trees, but the reason for talking about them is that you want to get them started, you want to get productive earlier on. And there's a lot of things, obviously there's everybody's life, there's a lot of things you would do differently, but this is part of the joy of living and learning things that I really wanted to... I would have put the perennial veg in right at the very beginning and planned them out much more kind of comprehensively at the start of the process, because perennial vegetables, like any other perennial plant, they take time to grow, and they're kind of, because they're quite niche, they are actually quite expensive. So if you start off with your perennial veg patch, which can have ground cover on it and it be around fruit shrubs and all the rest of it, but is near to the house, if you start that out at the beginning, then they will gradually increase in number. So for example, I've got potato onions, and it's taken a couple of years to get the numbers up for them. Welsh onions, the same. I've got perennial leeks, the same thing. Jerusalem artichoke, I can't get rid of them. They keep coming back. They're incredible. But I've got great big patch of Jerusalem artichoke now. Same with Turkish rocket. But they're all taken a while to get established, and they've all taken a while to get going. So that's why they're in this part here. So windbreak hedge. Windbreaks, you've got a living windbreak hedge. This is your what you really want to be aiming for. You want to plant your windbreaks on when you're doing the design. You do the design for the garden, the plan for the garden, and this is what you plant out first. You actually plant out your windbreaks before or at the same time as your canopy trees. Because you want them to protect. This is a Rosa rugosa, Japanese rose, which is a fantastic non-native, as you can tell. Grows about 2-3 meters, very kind of prickly, suckers everywhere. Actually doesn't do that massively well up here, and I can't figure out why. This is on Martin Crawford's site, so I don't use it that much. But you want to plant windbreak hedges, a living hedge. and you want to plant it for the final size. There's a lot of people say, oh, plant a hornbeam hedge, but that just means if you want a 2 meter high hornbeam hedge or 3 meter high hornbeam hedge, it's a tree, it wants to be a tree, it will keep on growing to be a tree. So plant for the final size of the windbreak that you want. Whilst your windbreaks are getting established, use dead hedges. Dead hedges are fantastic, they're brilliant, they are habitat, they are a place to chuck all your rubbish, they are windbreaks, they're a place to climb, to train climbers up. We've got one over there, oh this one actually, I've got a dead hedge over in one of our gardens. Oh no, oops, stop. Sorry, it's super slow. I've lost it. I've got a dead hedge over in the forest garden. It's growing a tayberry up there. I was chatting about it today. And tayberry's a raspberry, blackberry cross, really vigorous, thornless, and they're just really, really good. It doesn't look anything like this now. This is my first ever dead hedge, and I'm growing up. That's where the tayberry is. And then nurse trees. You can also grow small trees in front of canopy trees. One to use, one which I've used a fair bit, is Scotch broom, because it's quick growing, nitrogen fixing, grows about 2-3 meters. It's a bit floppy and it's easy to get rid of. I've got some dogwood, red dogwood. I think it's Cornus albus iberica, the Siberian dogwood thing, but that's not a very good nurse tree because it just has got really, really established and would be really difficult to move. So a polytunnel is also acts as a windbreak. So when you're planning your windbreaks, the key thing to remember is that the height protects 8 times the length. So if you have a 2 meter high windbreak, that will protect 16 meters. What you've got to be careful of is you don't want massive windbreak on the southern border of your property, because that will shade out all the light coming into your garden. So you want to have a low windbreak, but obviously the predominant wind here is from the southwest, so you have a low windbreak, then the wind will come over. What you can do is you can have a sequence of windbreaks across the garden if you have a larger garden. So you can have a sequence of a 2 meter windbreak, 8 meters, another 2 meter windbreak, 8 meters, another 2 meter windbreak, and then that will provide the protection. If you have the space, I'd always recommend using a double thickness windbreak if you can afford the space, because it takes a while for any hedge to get going. And yeah, how close some people say, oh, plant them 5 hedging plants to a meter, but it depends upon the cost of them as well. But when you are planting out your windbreak, you want to, if you can, possibly, if you're planting out deciduous plants, like then you want to plant in winter, because they will be bare root and they will be an awful lot cheaper. You're talking about £1 per plant, as opposed to a pot grown plant like an evergreen. Obviously doesn't drop its leaves, there isn't a dormant season for it in that respect. So a pot grown evergreen will be like £5 kind of minimum for a hedging plant, which is kind of quite expensive. What's going on here? What are you doing? There we go. So yes, aspect dictates height. So as I was saying, taller hedges then north and east, because western sunlight is more valuable. Sunlight from the east is in the morning. So when you get the sunlight from the east, the air hasn't had a chance to warm up. But when there's sunlight in the west, the air is warmed up. The somata, what they called, the little the whole things in the leaves which do the photosynthesizing, they open up, and there is more photosynthesis in afternoon sun. So generally afternoon sun is more valuable. You can calculate this using this app, Sun Surveyor, and then check the prevailing wind as well. You are going to have gaps in your hedges. If you don't have a gap in your hedge, you won't be able to get into your garden, will you? So if you do, but you do have a gap, there are various gaps that you can have. Vertical profile better. Yeah, apparently a vertical profile is better protection than a ramped profile for a garden. But the gaps that you want, a baffle island. I should do some more illustrations for that. I've got some more illustrations kicking around. A baffle is like you've got the gap in the hedge, and you just have a bit of hedge a bit further back down here. I'll do an illustration for next time. This is a stag, or you can have a staggered gap. I have a baffle island gap, so it's got a gap in it, and then an extra little bit of hedge up on the back here. Or you can have an angle. If it's a thick hedge, you can have an angled gap going through the hedge. Oops. All right then. So that's windbreaks. On to perennial vegetables. Perennial vegetables are fantastic. I better speed up a bit actually. Par's really, really important. Width of the bed is really important as well. You don't generally with a bed which you're spending a lot of time with, you kind of want it to be. I put beds in here 1.5 meters. You don't really want a bed to be any wider than 1.2 meters because you can't reach over from both sides. So 1 meter, 1.2 meters is fine. You can have curvy lines if you like. Straight lines are generally easier to keep maintained. And then signage as well, because if you're using perennial plants, perennial vegetables that you're not familiar with, if you don't know what they are, then you won't eat them. And if you don't eat them, there's no point growing them. So if you put a sign on them, you know what they are, then you can go and look them up, and other members of your family can go out and pick them as well. And keep your perennial veg close to the kitchen, because with all plants, the key thing really is attention, that you want to be able to go out there and harvest them when need be, or look after them, or put some more on, whatever, divide them, whatever it is. But like keeping, interacting with your plants is absolutely crucial. A forest garden is cultivated land. It's not wilderness. Perennial vegetable links. I'll just very quickly go through this. Alison Tyndale, Backyard Larder, she's great. I'll get a load of stuff from her online shop. Mandy Barber, Incredible Vegetables. I actually haven't bought anything from her, but she's great. She was on Gardener's World. She's friends of a friend, apparently. Stephen Barstow, he's fabulous. I like him a lot. He's written a couple of books. He has a brilliant website about edimentals. He actually grows the plants he talks about, edible ornamentals. He grows the stuff he talks about, and he eats it, and he writes about it, so he's brilliant. Alan Carter, it's not called Of Plums and Pig Nuts anymore, it's called Food Forest Garden. Foodforest.garden, that's it. Yeah, he's got a book out as well, which I haven't bloody bought yet, so I really need to read that. Again, really practical knowledge. He's actually got a forest garden, and he actually eats stuff out of it. And then there's Plants for Future, which is down at the moment. So that's all I've got time for perennial vegetables. I'm sorry about that, perennial vegetables. My thing's playing up. And then the canopy layer. The canopy layer. Right, so get your windbreaks in, spacing 1/4 of the average canopy diameter, and choose the right rootstock. Fruit trees are grafted, they're clones, and they're grafted onto a rootstock. The rootstock you have determines the height and the vigor of the tree, so make sure you get the right rootstock. Also, most fruit trees will do much better if they have a pollinating partner. That's a tree which will pollinate another tree rather than being self-pollinating. Some trees are self-fertile, but it's much easier to have make sure you've got a pollinating partner, and this applies to apples and cherries and plums and pears. And always, you can do a plan on a paper plan, you can do a CAD plan, but measure twice, plant out once. Okay, so, and I haven't talked about species, and there's some really amazing plants for a whole range of different things. I haven't got time to do it, I'm sorry. So I'm kind of running out of time, so I'm very aware. And then cultivate. So you've got the framework for your forest garden. So the next stage is the cultivation, and this cultivation really is section by section. Don't do what I do what I say. I tried to do like an entire acre of forest garden, and I just tried to do the whole lot all in one go, and it's a bit of a disaster because I've got to go back and do it all again anyway. So use your PARs to define the areas and then work on area by area. You cultivate one area. When that's done, move on to the next area. Don't try and do everything all at the same time. If you can afford to do it, and you can afford that's good, because then that's just it speeds up the process. But I would say if you can't, if there's kind of issue about time and money, and you can't afford to pay anyone to do it, then you're much better to do it section by section. I do have. I did a live stream about the costings for it, but I'll come on. I'll have to put that in the. I have to put a link in there. So different types of PARs. Grass PARs. Grass is good. It's hard wearing. It grows everywhere, but it's a bit of a pain in the ass because it grows everywhere. Wood chip is better for high volume areas, and there's hard surfacing for super high volume areas, but it's relatively expensive to put high PARs in. So the timing, this is what I was saying, one area at a time. And the key thing as well, like I will get it up actually because it is costing. Hold on, let me see. I'm just going to go here and see if I can find it. Talks costing. There we go. The key thing about the key thing about a forest garden is the amount the upfront cost, in terms of energy and in terms of time and in terms of plants. And one of the main things I didn't really kind of get until I started doing it was the amount of ground cover plants that you need to put in at the beginning. It's 3 to 5 plants per square meter, and if you've got a 10 by 10 meter space, that's 400 plants. And if you're buying 400 plants and they're like £5 a plant, that's ridiculous amounts of money. So either you buy plug plants or you buy some plants at the beginning, very, very beginning, when you move into a place, and then you propagate them. This is what this area is here. I actually put them on pallets now, makes it easier to maintain them. But you grow your own ground cover plants and propagate them yourself. And that's if you're into it and you have the time and the space and the ability to do that. If you want to, I did do a live stream about the costings for a forest garden, and that is here, natureworks.org.uk. It's on YouTube as well. Let me put out there. So go along and look at that'll give you a breakdown of the cost for it. So it's kind of quite scary how much the costs ramp up for a large, relatively small area actually as well. So timing wise, if you are going to propagate at the beginning, do look at using plug plants. I mean, I can always offer advice about where to get different plug plants from. I'll try to use native plants more as well. So when you're preparing the area, you've got your trees, you've got your windbreaks and your canopy, and then you've got, generally, it depends, everyone's situation is different, but generally you have an area of grass and you want to get rid of the grass. The best to get rid of the grass, manual deturfing is good for a small area. I mean, really a small area, it's a lot of work. Using a turfing iron, I'll just spell that out for you, is the best thing to use. Turfing iron, because with a spade it digs into the ground, is even more work. Turfing iron makes it a lot easier, but it's still bloody work. For a small area like this one here, you put down cardboard. It will take in the summer it takes a couple of months for the grass to kill off. Depends upon how hot it is and how dry it is. If it's hot and dry and the grass is covered, it will kill off in a couple of months in the summer. Otherwise it's a few months as well. But then you've also got other plants in there that you might want to get rid of. And then for a bigger area, this is what I'm doing. For a large area, I've got an acre field which one day will get done, which is being turned into a forest garden. I'll be using a mini digger for that area and then scraping off just the top bit of the grass, not the top soil, just the top bit of the grass. And then I'll be using that grass, covering it, and then land forming it, making it into a feature, going to put hedges onto them, so it'll actually have a function as well. So those are the 3 types of ways of getting rid of grass. And propagation, as I was saying, propagate. Go for easy plants. When you're propagating plants, go for easy plants like strawberries and comfrey and cornus and willow and things like that. And if you can, go for native plants as well, because they kind of can be very easy to propagate. And ground cover plants, because you need so many of them. Oops. So you've cleared the ground, you've got the grass out the way. When you come out to the planting, you've got bare earth. You pull back the cardboard or you plant through the cardboard, but you have basically bare earth. What you then do is you put a layer of bark mulch down. Now bark, I found, it makes a better ground cover in some respects because it takes longer to decompose, but wood chip is better in other respects because it's more readily available and decomposes quicker. You put the bark down and then you mark out, you can see just about where I've marked out the shrubs. And then you plant the shrubs out, and then you plant out the ground cover at 3 to 5 per square metre, and then you sow a temporary ground cover. And the one I use here, which, whoopsie, that's not what I wanted to do. The one I use here in West Wales is white mustard. It's kind of available as an agricultural green manure, so that's kind of pretty cool. You can put that on, and that just allows the ground cover to get established. Oh, blimey. And then shrubs, 3 types of shrubs. I've lost my bloody place on here. Here we go. So there's 3 types of shrub. obviously there's thousands of different types of shrub and fruit and shrubs and all sorts, but basically shrubs for soft fruit, shrubs as a windbreak, and shrubs for nitrogen fixing. There's autumn olive does it all. It has soft fruit, it's windbreak, and it does nitrogen fixing. And then sea buckthorn is in the UK is a native, so sea buckthorn also has soft fruit, windbreak, nitrogen fixing, and is a native. So that's 4 out of 3. So that's pretty amazing. But there are bloody loads and loads of shrubs out there. I haven't got time to talk about them. I'm very sorry. You do need to weed. I'm doing a project at the moment, an eco homes project. Well, I planted it, and it never got weeded, and there's grasses growing up, and I've been trying to get the residents to form a group and to weed and form a community garden, and they haven't weeded, and it's just really frustrating. So all the work that I've done is probably going to get mown eventually, but there you go, you win some, you lose some. But you do need to weed in the first, particularly in the first couple of years. That we get grass coming through, but it's grass, saplings like sycamore, particularly sycamore and ash. Bramble comes up everywhere, and dock. Those are the 4 kind of ones that around here that we get rid of. Scissor weeding is like, I'm not too fussed about dandelions depending where they are. Creeping buttercup, things like that, you can hike them out. Scissor weeding is when you cut the top off rather than disturb the soil and pull the whole plant out. And then a chop and drop mulch, which is when you can see here's a fruit tree, have a comfrey growing next to it, and then you chop it and drop it around the tree, and then that provides the fertility. There we go. So break it down. Plan, canopy, cultivate. Here's a reference. You can read this in your own time. I won't read it out. That's my stupid dog, Ronnie Barker, who is being mulched. You can see he's actually managed to get himself mulched. He's a bit daft. There we go. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I shall boot up Zoom. I'll just check the questions very quickly. Stomata. Oh, that's it. Yep, thank you, Janet. Fast, not okay, a bit of spam. Can't do without a bit of spam. Right, thank you very much. I shall start Zoom up. I'm going to go and grab a cup of tea, but I'll start Zoom up now and then get people to join as well. We'll do that. Okay, and I will email the Zoom link too. Okay, thank you for watching. Sorry